Good afternoon.
بلش. Okay. Hello.
Good morning.
Good evening from Lebanon.
Good morning from Australia. How lovely to hear and see you. I'm sorry for the delay in getting my link, but I won't say it's Lebanese efficiency, but there it is. But anyway, I know you're having problems with the internet in Lebanon, among a host of other issues. But anyway, to join you, and I'm honoured.
You are most welcome, sir.
Dear delegates, could I, at the outset, welcome the opportunity to speak to you. I do so in capacity as World President of the World Lebanese Cultural Union. I speak to my brethren in Lebanon, and I do so from a vantage that I am a third generation Lebanese. My forebears came to Australia in 1880. They came from a land that was then ravaged by an invader, the Ottomans. They came to Australia possessed of a spirit and imbued by the zeal that despite the occupation and the oppression, they would never forsake their homeland, right where their flight of refuge took them. Italy, for all of the diaspora descendants, that legacy that we will neither nor forget our beloved homeland. I've always said it, and my father, Allah الدم بيصير مويه ويا باي لا تنسى الأصل فيك. Now my lugha is of course mukasser. Many Lebanese have proudly told me that I speak my Arabic with a halting, if not disconcerting, break in the pronunciation. And I readily respond with a great deal of mirth, so what? If my tongue is twisted, at least my heart is firm. To all of our Lebanese in Lebanon, I cry and I bear with and for you your heartache. But I assure you that we in the WLCU and all of our coalition groups have neither forgotten nor have we ever, or more importantly, will never compromise your right to exist and your ability to have what is your just determination, a sovereign, stable, free, and open government. And that the society that you have ensured through your revolution will maintain, and more importantly, will vivify the spirit of what it is to be from the Levant. You know, Martin Luther King said, ladies and gentlemen, true peace is not merely the absence of tension, but it's the presence of justice. Sadly, in Lebanon today, there is no justice. Sadly, in Lebanon today, there is no government. And despite the promulgation and the proffering by the proselytes, such as Basile, or as we refer to him in Australia, imbecile, or equally the heartfelt forlorn hopes that we would have a president, unlike the geriatric general, who parades in a pompous and perfidious manner, attempting to coalesce or collaborate with cohorts who represent no more than the coterie of criminals that exist and have overlorded Lebanon for the years that she has been subjugated and brought to her knees. And we in the world share in the diaspora the embarrassment and the heartache to see our homeland set upon like a piece of carrion comfort while scavengers loom around. It may well be that my message to you ekes of poetic prose, but how else can we get to you the fact that we grieve for and with you? Today, Lebanon is witnessing a revolution of sorts from without as well as from within. We in the WLCU, our new Lebanon, SOUL, 100%, Pyramid, and all of the other NGOs and groups that have risen up against the tyrannous regime, empathize and embolden the hope that Lebanon is not without salvation. Can I indicate to you that I have and I will not cease in the term of my presidency and beyond it to fight for Lebanon. I have always fought for Lebanon. I have always stood up for what is right for the Lebanese, because after all, who can forget or forsake, as I have said, what it means to be Lebanese? It is indeed not only a badge of honor, but it is a heartfelt privilege to say that I come from a country that has given the world such a cultural richness from which that world has derived and is, more importantly, a better world because of what the Lebanese have done. Equally, I say to you, as much as we have done for ourselves and for the world, ultimately, we have let down what is the reality, namely that in making ourselves independently entrepreneurial achievers, we have allowed ourselves to be enslaved by the ability of those who seek to undertake what is a self-righteousness and an aggrandizement of their own greed. And they are emboldened in their regard by affiliating with the people and, more importantly, the enemies that are both within and without. I know that my time is limited and I will finish on this note, but I can assure you that we will not be silent. In Australia, we're organising a conference internationally for neutrality. We're doing so in response to the prelate, his beatitude, Cardinal Rai. It is not so much a religious innovation, but rather a response to a responsible religious leader who, for all Lebanese, has seen the need for this clarion call, which we are going to assist and enable in late July, early August. But can I just finish on this one very somber but very sincere note, that there is a need now to ensure that within the diaspora and within our regime that exists throughout this world, that the governments of the world now realize they must come to the party. The welcoming news that there will be EU sanctions should also be equally responded to by other administrations who will take and should take a note of the ravages that are within Lebanon. Lebanon, like Myanmar, Yemen, and many other areas of disconcert, need to be salvaged. They need to be restored. If I can conclude on this one note, may I ask you, and each and every one of you in this conference, so ably organized and indicative of the resolve that exists within Lebanon and throughout, to keep, and I implore you, to ensure that you keep the call to your domestic governments. Let them be annoyed and hounded, just as if we were doing a deal. Make sure that we do the deal for Lebanon. Make sure that we deliver for Lebanon what is right. Can I leave on this note, if I may, with a little bit of mirth? I was watching Basile and his ribald rhetoric. Impressive as a used car salesman as he is, reminiscent of Richard Dreyfuss and the Tin Men, And I love that movie, not just for the con men that were portrayed in it, but for the manner in which they were portrayed. Basile and his cohorts should realize that their attempts to resurrect what they think is going to be a government of salvation should be emboldened by the phrase, a souffle, my friend, doesn't rise twice. We, in turn, are Lebanon's salvation and hope, simply because we are true Lebanese. نحن ما بننسى what it means to be a Lebanese, and we will never, ever allow Iran to take tutelage. The new president in Iran should understand his reactionary, dictatorial manner that he seeks to impose upon his country will never be tolerated by our people. God bless and preserve Lebanon, and I thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Mamnoon Konati. Thank you.
Steve, good afternoon or good morning to you. Walid Malouf from Washington. How are you?
Walid, how are you? It's what a privilege to see you.
Thank you.
One of Lebanon's great citizens.
What is the WLCU doing effectively in pushing the policies that we all like to see regarding the present situation in Lebanon? Any effective move that you are doing? I know that you have been very active with the United Nations regarding the explosion in Beirut, but what else? Anything materialized from these efforts that you were leading?
Yes, we have attempted, and we are going to reapproach UNSCOL to speak to them concerning the 3 R's and the inability to implement such a economic reform when they are not prepared or will not be prepared to assist with the domestic, or they're waiting for the domestic Lebanese government. You see, Walid, the other thing that the WLCU is intent upon progressing, if we can, is to bring to the attention of the UN in UNSCOL and Lebanon those matters concerning the economic reforms. Secondly, more importantly, Walid, we are attempting to highlight what has occurred with the Beirut port explosion. But there are 2 advantages in that Beirut port explosion. Firstly, as I've indicated, and I see it's been adopted, I've labeled it a crime against humanity. That's the first thing. There needs to be, as we all know, and I'm not stating the obvious, that full investigation. But the Human Rights Council, and more importantly, the rapporteur on the independence of the judiciary in Switzerland, needs to understand that the Beirut port explosion is but another manifestation of the inability of the Lebanese judiciary to act independently. And that is the second feature that is being promoted by the World Lebanese Cultural Union in that regard. There's been talk of a transparency legislative initiative by the Lebanese government. I've not seen it, and I'm waiting for someone from the Beirut Bar Association to share it with me. But that's the next vantage point from the WLCU. The third point, Walid, is that we are having a neutrality conference, and that is going to be undertaken towards the end of July, early August, globally, and we've started with our Prime Minister in Australia becoming a party to that. The neutrality issue is one that is neither appreciated or, more importantly, in my humble opinion, understood, and it needs to be put throughout the diaspora. No country can survive if it does not have effective domestic regimes that enable the invitation of private investment from overseas or the proliferation of effective business community within it. and more importantly, no country that does not have a neutrality regime in place, such as Lebanon, can be regionally secure and safe. And that is the final initiative, if I may, Waleed, just to answer your question, is that the WLCU is also seeking to ensure that we enable throughout our diaspora cohorts to coalesce and bring together under the WLCU leadership, ideally, intervention through each of our domestic governments. Now, that is no small feat, Waleed, as you know. We're working with the cohorts in America, in Australia, in the EU, and my World Secretary General, who I see on the screen now, and I welcome him, has been of great assistance to me, along with our colleagues Ferris Weeby and Anis Garbet, Eli Gideon, and each of those parties that I am able to work with, together with our other NGO colleagues, such as Dr. Rashid Rahmi from Pyramid and Soul now, and 100%, all of those are doing what they can. You know, Waleed, when you say effectively, groups such as ours, who are pro bono groups, can only be effective with the spirit and the zeal of those who constitute those groups. And more important, where we can, we will lend assistance to any right-minded political party that is also prepared to assist in the restoration of Lebanon as a free and democratic sovereign nation. Now, having said that, Waleed, that is what we're effectively trying to do. I don't say it because it's the WLCU, but we've published, as you'll see on our website, a paper on corruption, and we'll be publishing papers on neutrality and judicial transparency in the forthcoming months. That sort of work, Waleed, as you know, takes time. And more importantly, that's really what we're dedicating ourselves to, and where we welcome think tanks and the intellectuals throughout the world and others of a right-minded nature to contribute. If they are so minded, we are very welcome to take them on board.
Thank you for this brief. That was a great brief. Thank you.